The people making Monaco take the mic. I'm Nancy Heslin, and welcome to Monaco Info, the podcast. Our guest today comes from rowing royalty out of Philadelphia. His grandfather was a 3-time Olympic gold medalist and is considered one of the greatest American oarsmen of all time. His father was a 4-time Olympian and 6-time U.S. national champion who became president of the U.S. Olympic Committee. Yet the Harvard alumni was a pentathlete before switching to sculling and holds the varsity team record for the largest come-from-behind victory in the history of the Harvard-Yale Regatta. The first cousin of Prince Albert is president of the U.S. chapter of the Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation and is in town for National Day and the Challenge Prince Albert II Rowing Cup. Meet John B. Kelly III. Welcome to Monaco Info, the podcast. John, I just have to say, as a rower and someone who truly appreciates the sport, it's an honor to have you in the studio.
Oh, thank you.
And I'd like to know, do you listen to podcasts?
Nope. I have not listened to one yet. My wife does.
And have you ever done a podcast as an interview?
No.
I don't think you do a lot of interviews.
Nope, not a whole lot.
Because I've even tried to research you, and for somebody from such an esteemed family, you're kind of a little bit of a mystery to me. So let's dive into the mystery of John B. Kelly.
That sounds much more exotic.
Well, I know you've probably had quite a fun week celebrating National Day here in Monaco.
It's actually my favorite time to visit. Albert's very kind to invite me to come and gives a chance to connect with more than just Albert. Albert and I speak pretty regularly, but I don't have the opportunity to connect as much with his sisters and their kids. And so this is always a great time to, and the broader family as well, the Polignacs and the other cousins on the Grimaldi side. So it's who I've gotten to know over the years. So it's a great time to be here.
Do you come every National Day?
Not every, but I've probably been to, I don't know, probably 7 or so over the last 10, 15 years.
And you were here in July to celebrate Prince Albert's 20th anniversary of the accession. Mm-hmm. And I have a question for you about that, because when you're standing alongside the Princey family, whether you're looking out these windows from the palace or you're down in the courtyard standing next to him as he makes a speech, and you look out and you see this sea of people who really, truly adore their sovereign, what does that feel like to be a part of that family?
Actually, that's similar to questions I get asked a lot, like what was it like growing up with a princess as an aunt and stuff? It's the kind of thing you grow up with it, so it is. It's not.
It's normal to you.
It's exactly, yeah. It's kind of normal, but
so the crowds being there, like just as kind of like your daily life.
Well, I wouldn't say daily life, but it's it's something that you've grown up with. It's somewhat normal. My dad was a bit of a celebrity in Philadelphia, so sort of the same atmosphere. But I think in particular, it is great to be there with Albert, and I think Albert seems to enjoy having his family, his broader, larger family around him, and to see how the people of Monaco do seem to appreciate him so much, and it's just neat to see.
Mm-hmm.
I'm continually impressed with Albert and how he's managed the country and managed
He's a loved man.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I think the weekend in July was the weekend I met you at the rowing club, Société Nautique de Monaco. And I have to share this story because it's so silly to me. But I arrived at the club to train, mm-hmm. and the coach says to me, "Oh, John Kelly is in the club room, and he's on the rower, and he wants to go out in a boat. Why
Mm-hmm.
don't you go ask him to go out?" I'm like, "Huh?" I'm thinking like, wait a second here. This is like a family dynasty of rowers. His father and grandfather are legends in the United States. And, I don't have that much experience. Like, no way. And the funniest part was this French rower member comes in a few seconds after me, and he has less experience than I do. And he goes right up to you and says, "John, would you like to row?" And I thought, wow, like, good for him. But I just was so in awe of the name, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to be in a boat with you. Do you actually row here every time you come?
I try to. I don't. Sometimes it doesn't work out with the schedule, but no, I enjoy it. It's been actually the first time I did back in the old boathouse.
So that would have been closer to
it's down the quay
port.
a little further, yeah. And it was across the street. It was funny. You had to bring your boats across the street to
across traffic.
Yeah.
Okay.
You had to stop traffic and bring the boats across the Kennedy Quay to get to the water. But Actually, the first time I just sort of snuck in and used the ergs. And I didn't know anyone yet at the club, but then I subsequently I did. I hung around enough and said the oarsmen were coming out, then introduced myself, and have been a member the last 4 or 5 years. And so I do try to and I keep in touch with Matthias, the president of the club, and they're always so very kind and welcoming us.
Is it
as a
is it
crew.
different when you row in different cities, different countries? Like obviously here, you're coastal rowing. Is that
Right.
something you
That's
feel
obviously
at
coastal rowing
ease?
is quite different, and it takes a little while to get used to it because the water moves around a lot more than it does in. And I love the fact you guys call it the coastal rowers refer to flat water rowing as sweetwater rowing, um, and yeah, so it is. No, I do enjoy. It's one of the things I try to do when I travel is reach out to local clubs and because of the name, they're usually very accommodating and welcoming
Oh, I
me
would
too.
imagine so.
So it's been fun. I've rowed in um, Galway and in
Oh,
which is a
amazing.
great place, beautiful place to row.
That would be quite wild, though. The sea could be quite
Oh,
crazy.
they row on the river above it,
Okay.
not in the bay.
Okay.
They do have. Now that I've gotten to know coastal rowing through Monaco, I'm starting to. Next, I was trying to connect with there's a coastal club in Dublin, which I haven't been able to connect with yet. But next time I'm in Dublin, I'm hoping to row with them. And I think Galway has a coastal group that rows on the other side of the city on the bay. But I've done that in Sligo. I've done it in Phoenix, Arizona. Actually has some water to row, and I was surprised.
I am shocked to hear that.
There's a little reservoir, and but they row at like 4 a.m. because it gets too hot during the day.
My kind of people.
So it's, but it's a great way to travel because then you meet local people and it makes my trips much more enjoyable when I'm able to do that.
And it's one of the sports that as you age, it stays with you. It's not too hard on the body and
Exactly. Yeah.
maybe the hands, but
Yeah.
well, let's talk about the Kelly family opening doors for you because you grew up in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
What was childhood like for you? And I ask you that because it sounds like a pretty typical question, and I'm sure cliche, because your aunt was Princess Grace and your father and your grandfather were, Olympic champions and a big name in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
As a child, what's it like growing up in Philadelphia? It's not the same as growing up in Monaco.
Yeah. Well, Philly's a interesting city. It's a big city. It's bigger than most people realize. It's the fifth or sixth largest city in America, depending on whether you count the city itself or the metropolitan area. And yet it has a feeling of very much of a smaller town, partly because the families stick around there. For instance, in our family, my generation, there are 13 first cousins.
Really?
13 descendants of John B. Sr. and Margaret Major, his wife, my grandmother. And of the 13 grandchildren, all but 3 of them live in the Philadelphia area.
And the other 3 were in Monaco.
Or Monaco.
Okay.
Grace was the only one who got away. Then that's not untypical in Philadelphia. The families, sort of people stay there. We don't get a lot of people, although that's changing a bit when we have some bigger corporations that are bringing in people from outside. But
Why is that? Why do people stick close to home then?
I don't know about why that's developed in Philly. It's one, we love the city and we enjoy it.
There are opportunities.
Oh yeah. No, it's a vibrant city, and it just culturally it is. I don't know whether it's the Quaker influence. It is the city had the largest Quaker influence back in its founding, with William Penn, starting with William Penn himself.
Can you tell people what the Quaker influence is?
No, the Quakers are known. Their formal name is the Society of Friends, and they are a religion. It's a Christian religion, but it's very much about you individually connect with God or the Spirit, whatever. And again, it's very open because it's sort of to your own pace. There's no ministers, so it's a friends meeting, and they still have an outsized influence on the city because of all the private schools. And Philadelphia, for some reason, people like to send their kids to private schools, even in the suburbs where the public schools are very good.
Really, it's
That's a
into
tradition.
the okay.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Are you defined by the school that you go to?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
But of the private schools, probably half of them are still Quaker
Really?
founded. Yeah, founded by Quakers and still have Quakers on the boards. And their approach to life is to be humble. What's the expression they have? Live simply so others can simply live.
And you don't have to be a Quaker to attend a Quaker school, a
No,
Quaker-run school,
no,
right?
no,
Okay.
most aren't.
Okay.
But you have to attend Quaker meeting while you're at school.
What is that like?
Quaker
It's like a
meetings.
sermon.
No,
No?
no. Quaker meeting. It's and for the kids, they don't quite do it well, but it's actually a wonderful ceremony. They meet, and you might sit in silence for the hour, and no one might. So it's almost like a group meditation.
Wow.
But then, if anybody who feels moved can get, because again, there's no minister. The meeting starts with the elders of the community when they shake hands and sit down, and then everybody sits down in the meeting. And at the end of the meeting, they turn to each other and shake hands, and when the time's up, and everybody gets up. And between those two, those are the only formal parts of the meeting. Between that, if someone feels inspired, they can get up and speak to the group and share something.
Otherwise, you just sit in silence.
Otherwise, you sit in silence.
I might take my husband to that and see how that works between us.
It's fascinating. But anyway, I think that does create it certainly creates a spirit where people are, it's not considered polite to brag about yourself and promote yourself, and that's their way.
Interesting.
And-
Some
and so
people
I th- and
people could really learn from that, I would
Yeah.
think, these
Yeah.
days. Yeah. So do you think that the school system and the closeness of family plays a reason to why people stay?
Yeah, I think it does. And like the old businesses, and this is going to be more about Philadelphia than anything else. But
We'll get
like
to it.
when I first came out of school and was in business and a banker, the most of the so many of the businesses were just small, sort of mid-sized family businesses that were in their third or fourth generation. Whereas in other cities, they had had combined and made bigger and and then maybe moved south and whatnot as the labor got more expensive in the Northeast. So we were a manufacturing city for longer than most of the other Northeast cities.
Okay.
Because of these family businesses kind of held on to them. As they got into their third and fourth generation, they started to sell off. But the first couple of generations kept them close, and and why we didn't have as many big corporations. And whenever we get a big corporation, they tend to move to New York since we're so close to
That's
New York.
right.
Like the Pennsylvania Railroad, which was in 1900 the largest corporation in the world. And then they built a tunnel under the Hudson River and moved their headquarters from Philadelphia to New York.
But what about growing up? What are some of your childhood memories? Because it would have been a different time. And also, as you say, like you had 3 cousins that were from the princely family in Monaco. What was that like as a kid? Were you aware of that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And when Albert and I went to summer camp together, it was.
Oh, no. Where's that? In the States?
Yeah, in the
Okay.
States, in New Hampshire.
That's hilarious.
And there were some obnoxious kids who, Albert fit right in, and not the obnoxious, but they were some who teased him. So it was all known, but most everybody let him just be Albert, which was great.
Well, I mean,
or as he was known there, he was Albie at camp.
Albie. Well, he is, a prince of the people. So I imagine that he grew up that way. So he would have been very at ease at summer camp. And it would have been fun just to hang out with he was just your cousin.
Yeah. And everybody from camp, loved him and had a great time. The same like his Amherst friends, they're just all great guys who appreciate Albert and let him be Albert. Yeah.
And so what are some of your memories then? Summer camp, what else growing up?
Oh, well, in terms of like with Grace,
Your aunt?
yeah, Aunt Grace. One thing that was nice is that they came almost every summer to the beach house. So we had a family beach house in Ocean City, New Jersey, and that's where until I went to camp, I spent most of my summer times down there. Grace and the family would come over every summer. So again, we knew even before camp, we knew they were cousins. So for cousins that lived 3,000 miles away, we were relatively well connected. And Grace was wonderful about keeping in touch with more the girls than the boys, but particularly as the girls reached maturity, she would write to them about motherhood, about other things, this of coming of age, and my sisters got regular correspondence from her. She was really just wonderfully engaged with the family.
As a young person, did you and your sisters come to Monaco also to visit?
I
When
did
you were
after-
young?
Well, like after one of the summers at camp, we came over and spent some time up at Rockagel. Susan and Caroline went to Onika in Pennsylvania with my sisters. Not as long as Albert and I were at Tecumseh, but so they had somewhere. And then Susan, and then my cousin Grace and Caroline were pretty close as teenagers, and got into a little trouble.
I can imagine. And also, you have a little mischievous grin, so I think there's a little troublemaking in both families. So, growing up on the water, spending all your summers on the water, did you feel pressure as a young person to follow your father and your grandfather's footsteps to row?
No, not at all. My mom, to some extent, kept me a little bit away from all that. She did not encourage. In fact, she didn't really want me to get into rowing.
Because?
I think because the concern that there would be a lot of pressure. Also, I should add in the background you provided, which was very accurate in terms of my grandfather, my dad's Olympic careers. But often people forget my mother was also an Olympian.
Your mother was an Olympian?
She was a swimmer. Same.
I apologize to your mom because that is a huge oversight, and especially if she was a swimmer.
Yeah,
I mean, I love swimming, so.
She was a backstroker for the Walter Reed swim team in Washington, D.C., and my mom and dad met at the Helsinki Olympic Games in 1952. So sort of a triple Olympic background.
Wow. So how many Olympics did she compete in?
She only competed in one as a swimmer, and then she switched to coaching and was the most successful coach on the East Coast of the United States, the only East Coast team to win the national title in 1962. And she had two of her swimmers were in Tokyo in 1964 at the Olympics.
Well, I mean, you have the height. Did you not want to swim even?
Oh, no, so swimming was my primary sport.
Okay.
No, it's always funny. People say, wonder like when you learned how to swim. It's like, I don't remember not knowing how to swim.
I can imagine.
From being at the beach and then the pools all the time. And I was pretty much a fish for a lot of my life. But that's how I got into. So instead of rowing, I went through school doing 3 different sports every year, and ended up with track and swimming primarily.
But you went on to be a pentathlete.
Which is why the pentathlon recruits people who have a good run-swim combination. And then they figure they'll teach you the other 3 sports, which fortunately I actually already knew how to do the other sports. So
what are the other 3 sports?
So it's running and swimming, and then pistol shooting, fencing, and horseback riding at stadium jumping.
Would a Quaker be allowed to do pistol shooting?
Sure. Yeah. Now
Okay.
They don't have a problem with target shooting.
Okay.
But they are a nonviolent group. They are a group that can. They're one of the few that you can, if you are legitimately a Quaker, you can be exempt from military duty. Now, usually, what they'll do, they'll still serve. At least the tradition within is they'll still serve, but in a nonviolent role in the military. So they're not trying to skirt their duty, but they just don't want to be the one having to.
So they could still do the pistol shooting, no problem.
They do that. Yeah, that's not.
Of the 5 disciplines in as a pentathlete, what did you really enjoy? Which was the one for you? What did you excel at?
Excel. I was good at the run swim. That was pretty good. But I think enjoyed the most was the stadium jumping. That's because I wasn't particularly graceful at it, but because it's a neat way to ride because you don't. Unlike a lot of horseback riding competitions where you have your horse that you've been riding and grooming and training on for ages, at the pentathlon, they assemble a stable of horses and you draw straws for them, and you get and you get only 20 minutes on that horse before the competition, and so it's kind of it's fun. It's because you got to get on that horse and in 20 minutes kind of connect with it and work with it because when you go through the stadium jumping course, you got to be one with the horse as they go over the ride, or else you're going to be on the ground. So that was fun. And I wasn't particularly graceful at it, but I did well at it because long legs. I could hang on to them. My first competition, I lost the stirrup on the first jump, lost the second stirrup on the second jump, and still completed the course.
Wow, that's impressive.
And I was like hanging onto the horse's neck at the end. It wasn't.
The horse was really riding you, and like, get me over the line.
But we finished it and without too many faults, and so that was fun.
Did you compete nationally?
Yeah, we went. I spent 2 summers before college down in San Antonio, where the National Training Center is.
What's coming to me as you're speaking about this? Now, you come from this long line of male rowers. Your mom is an Olympian. Prince Albert is an Olympian. There's a lot of sports going on here. When you guys are all together, it must be crazy competitive playing any type of game or anything in life.
Well, for instance, we have a summer party a family party at the beach. Our cousins, the Lamans, still have a house down there. So we meet there every Labor Day. And Albert and Sebastian come sometimes, a few times. But There's tug of war. There's
Oh, I love it.
horseshoes. There's body surfing is the big event. Chicken bake. Almost anything you can do, it's a competition.
Oh, I'm sure. And I mean, like, really
oh,
wholeheartedly.
oh yeah.
That's amazing.
And
That's amazing.
we kind of fun of it. Because it's all fun and games, but it's they buy the biggest, most garish trophies.
You have to have that.
Yeah, have to. So I won the chicken bake off this year, and I have this giant trophy now in my tiny little house.
That's fun. That's
Yeah.
very fun. So when you went to Harvard, I read, there's not a lot of articles out there, as I said, but there was an article talking about how when you went to Harvard, you really wanted to hone up on the fencing side of being a pentathlete.
Yeah,
And
that was my weakest sport, so I figured I'd go and spend my freshman year with the fencing team. And my plan was to go back to Texas, to San Antonio in the next summer, and hopefully that wouldn't be my weakest sport anymore.
and what happened?
I didn't enjoy the fencing team at Harvard very much, and so I guess I didn't enjoy it at all. So by Thanksgiving, I was thinking I wanted to change, so I called up the rowing coach and asked if it was too late to try out.
I heard it's Harry Parker was the
Harry
coach.
Parker was the coach.
And I heard that when students arrived, they would stand and watch the freshmen and go, okay, that guy's over 6 foot tall. Put him in a boat,
And
put him in a boat.
That's not unique to Harvard. That's common in a lot of not as much anymore. They do more recruiting now. But in those days, most of the rowers might not have, they usually are good athletes, but might not have rowed before getting to college. In fact, half of our freshmen first boat were not novices, so to speak.
Yeah, but you would have arrived as a Kelly, and he would have been very interested in you.
Oh yeah, and my dad had taught me to row, even though I'd not been in a rowing program.
Oh, what was that like for your dad to be in a boat with you?
Oh, that was fun. That was my parents had split up when I was 6 years old, so it was actually him teaching me to row was really one of the few things that we kind of could do together and have a nice time with.
Where would you have rowed then?
At Vesper Boat Club, where I'm still a member. Yeah.
And was he a patient teacher? Because sometimes when somebody's that gifted at a sport, it's difficult to actually teach somebody how to do the skill.
I don't remember any.
Was he yelling at you?
No. I don't remember. Maybe I picked up on it quickly. I'm not sure. It was sort of when I taught my kids. Both of them, neither of them wanted to pursue it, but my son did a little bit. But both of them, I think part of it is when you learn young, it's so much easier. Because I teach a lot of older people now, and it's very frustrating teaching older people. But no, I don't remember him yelling at me at all about it. I remember, some of the tips he gave me, and I still try to get
Like
those
what?
right.
Okay, as a rower, give me something.
But he had a very strong finish.
Okay,
And
I don't have that.
At the finish of the stroke, and in sculling, that's particularly important. Whereas the sweep, when people come to sweeping in college and learn, everybody wants to be the big tough guy, and so everybody's hitting the catch real hard. And in the big eight, that's fine. But in sculling, it's you want a softer catch and build to the finish. So
Okay, because we're going to talk a little bit about rowing, let's give some definitions. What is sculling?
So sculling is 2 oars per person.
Okay.
And the oars are smaller, only about 9 feet, or it'd be about 2.5 meters or so.
And the attack is with your arms in front.
The catch, we call it the
catch.
at the catch of the stroke, when your legs are compressed, arms out, reached,
Just before the push.
Yeah, just before you put the blades in the water. Yeah.
And when you talk about your father having a really strong finish.
The finish is at the end of the stroke when you've pushed your legs down, your seats slid to the back, and that's when your back and arms are utilized.
So sculling is always 2 oars. You're not just on the one side. Okay.
Yeah. And then the other rowing is sweeping, which is with a big, it's about a 12-foot oar, and it's 2 hands on 1 oar. And so always have to do them in pairs. So
Hopefully.
Yeah. So there's a pair, 4 and an 8 are the sweep boats.
And which did you prefer?
Oh, I love both. I prefer big boats over the single, whereas my dad and grandfather preferred the single. They did other boats as well, but they excelled at that, and I think they preferred it. But I found for me, and this maybe was a mistake, as I finished college, I wanted to. At that point, I did want to try to compete with the legacy and join in, and so I switched to sculling and to trying to row in the single. And did it for about 2 years. But in hindsight, I should have stayed in the bigger boats. Still could have been sculling, like in a quad. But because it found that for my training, I was more motivated about training to not let the other guys down as opposed to
It's a
just
tough
for
one.
myself. So when I'm out in the single and in that point that you need to push yourself further to advance your conditioning and your skill, that I would sometimes back off just because it's uncomfortable, it's hard, and if I'm by myself, it was like doesn't really matter. But if I'm in a boat with other people, I never let up,
It's really impressive.
so that's and again, this is sort of looking back on it in hindsight. I didn't kind of realize it at the time, but I think I would have had more success if I had stayed in the big boats and trained with more people.
So I did read a quote that when you walked into the boathouse for the first time at Harvard, you were like, "I'm home." You had you really had a feeling.
Yeah. No, it was amazing how again I'd been, I guess at that point maybe 3 months with the fencing team and just that didn't feel like fit in, didn't connect with the guys, and immediately when I walked in the boathouse, it just felt right. And Harry, the other thing just about Harry picking out people, he did. They literally would. Back then, you had to physically register. Now everything's done online. But in the old days, you had to actually show up and register for classes. And there's a big hall, Memorial Hall, it's called at Harvard. And then you go through, and there's all these desks. You got to sign up your classes and file your paperwork in. So every freshman walks out the door at the end of this process, and Harry would be standing there right at the door. And everybody over 6 feet tall, he would invite them to come down to the boathouse.
But it was really competitive to join the teams at Harvard.
What's neat about rowing, most coaches don't cut anybody. So from his invitations, he would get 150, 170 young men showing up.
Really?
And he would just train them until they quit. And by Christmas, and our class had a great spirit, and we ended up keeping, I think by the end of the freshman year, we still had 40, 45 men still rowing. So we had 4 boats out every day.
What time did you train at?
Oh, we were lucky at Harvard. We got to train in the afternoon.
Oh, okay.
most schools, and unfortunately, I think some of the coaches get into that kind of the toughness. Oh, we got to get up in the morning, even if they're physically close enough to the river. Sometimes they have to do it because the river's not close to campus, and they need to, and it's easier to get there when there's no traffic, and so they tend to do that in the morning. But at Harvard, we were lucky; we got to row in the afternoon.
Well, you may have been able to row in the afternoon, but I can't imagine that made the actual training any easier.
No training.
So these are the 2 questions I'd like, just to explain to people, because we hear about, the Harvard Boathouse. What is it like to walk into that and tell people, what is the training like? How physically demanding and mentally demanding is it? Especially when you're first starting out.
Yeah. Again, there's 2 aspects to rowing. One is the physical conditioning, and that just takes time and miles and effort to build your cardiovascular capacity. The boat races are only in the 8s at the international level and the top collegiate level, about 5.5 minutes. So it's like running a mile.
I know, it's the strangest thing to have to exert your energy for 5 minutes.
Right. And it's, it sounds like a soccer game goes for 40 minutes or 60 minutes. How can this be that hard? But it is intense. And your heart rate jumps after the start up to about 200 beats a minute. You start going into lactic acid. I've forgotten the medical terms. But anyway, your body is spent 2 minutes in. You already feel like you're done. And you get to the last 500 meters, and you're pretty much on muscle memory at that point because it's hard even to think about what you're doing at that point. And that's where all the miles of training come in, to both for your conditioning and to be able to keep getting the blade in and out of the water without catching a crab.
Because you're going out, what cadence, what speed?
So you go off the line in an 8. You go off the line at maybe a 42 to 46 strokes per minute for the first 20 strokes to get the hull speed up to speed. And then you settle down and you'll do the rest of the race at a 36 or 38. The long race, the Harvard-Yale race, we would row at between a 30, probably about a 34. We'd settle down to about a 32, 34 strokes a minute.
And what happens to you? Let's just say somebody goes out and they start training. They're at Harvard. They're in the 8 boat. What are the hardest parts for the body? Is it the hands, or is it your legs? Like, what suffers from an oar?
Well, you get blisters on your hand, but that's part of thing. And you can always tell the oarsmen out in their class because they're all picking at their hands all day to peel off the calluses and stuff. But no, it's the hard. Yeah, because you're on the ergometers during the winter. You're on the and out in the boat. It's just hard workouts. You're just pushing yourself because you're trying to develop that. And then back in those days, the training was a little different. It was more interval training. So you're doing like 10. You'll go out and warm up, do your drills and whatnot, and then the hard part of the workout would be like 10 5-minute pieces. And you usually the best thing to do is always have another boat with you because then you're always competing.
You need to push yourself.
Yeah, and but the whole training is to push yourself hard enough so that when you're in the race, you still have a little gas in the tank. Hopefully, a little more gas in the tank than the guy next to you in the next boat as you come in the last 500. Because the last 500 meters, and it's funny. I used to think that I was a wimp about it until because as much as racing is great fun, but it's also a fair amount of pain because of the lactic acid and a lot of discomfort and your lungs just gasping.
And you're
for air.
qualifying too. It's not like there's just one race, right? You have different series?
Well, it depends on the race. The collegiate race is just one and done.
Okay.
And the bigger international races, yeah, you'll do. But they spread them out. You rarely race more than once a day.
Okay.
But I was having lunch one time with a fellow who was in the 64 Olympic 8. And in fact, they were thinking of making a movie. They were trying to make a movie about that 8. Was
it better than Boys in the Boat?
I think it would have been if they'd made it, but they never got the money.
What was different about that then? What was different about their story?
It's similar to the book of Boys in the Boat, not like the movie. The movie seemed to focus just on Rance, who was a good character and certainly made a good story. But the title of it was The Boys in the Boat, not The Boy in the Boat.
Yeah.
And the book did a little better job
Good
of talking
point.
about all the other gentlemen in that boat. But this crew in 64 that my dad he had stopped rowing by then, and this was his big effort after his own career to build a great 8 out of Vesper Boat Club again. And because Vesper had represented the United States in 1900 and 1904 with the 8 and won gold medals, and he wanted to do that again. And so he recruited the oarsman and the coach, and was really the producer of that. But it was a great ensemble of characters. Just 2 Yale boys, and then these brothers from Virginia who actually were kind of patricians from Virginia, but they played up that they were the country boys and talking about the heart. These you Ivy Leaguers, but it was a great mix of people from different walks of life and from characters. So that was a fun book. But anyway, I think it could make a nice ensemble movie out of that. And since Vesper had done it in 1904, every other Olympic 8 from the United States had been a college crew. And so this is the first time a club would go again.
Oh, okay.
And so there was all that drama, and a lot of the rowing establishment didn't think they could or should do it, and so they're bucking the
drama.
trends. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
You're having lunch.
I was having lunch with Boyce Budd, who was 4-man, I think, in the boat, and they were talking with this potential producer of this movie, and they said, "Well, what's it like at the start?" And he described the same feelings when you're backing into the stake boats at the start. You're like, this feels like, why am I doing this to myself again? And he described the same way. So I thought, oh, maybe I'm not such a wimp, because you realize, you're like, in 2 minutes, I'm going to be in the hurt locker, and then you're always afraid, that you don't want to be the one to catch a crab, or there's the anxiety of all that, and
you let your team down.
Yeah, exactly,
right.
Yeah, but then the race starts, and you don't think about that again, and it's just place the next stroke, go.
When I read Boys in the Boat, one of the things that I really couldn't understand was the specific placement in the boat, like how they really kept shifting those 8 guys around to try to find who, because you kind of think, okay, one is the nage, they're setting the pace, everyone else behind. Do they really have that unique of a position in a boat?
Yeah, there is, and that's the true genius in coaching, is having an eye. In rowing coaching, is to have an eye to pick the right people for the boat and put them in the right spot in the boat. now in the 8, there's enough diversity that you don't that you can have repeats.
Mm.
So there's the what's known as the engine room in the 8, which are the middle 4 seats, and basically that's where you usually put your biggest guys. Frankly, their technique doesn't have to be as quite precise.
Power.
You're more interested in the power and the strength there, which was a little odd because I wasn't a very big oarsman, but I ended up in 4 seat right in the middle of the engine room. I also did stroke one year, so I guess I was.
Oh, that's right. Because I learned it in French. I always struggle with the words in English. The stroke in French is the nage.
Oh, the nage. Oh, I
Yeah,
like
there
that
you go.
one.
So you
Thank
can use it this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. So the stroke is the one who's the furthest to the stern of the boat because we face backwards in rowing. And so the stroke is the one that everybody can see and follow, and they set the pace, right? So and they work, if it's a coxed boat like an 8, they'll work with the coxswain who's sitting right in front of them in terms of racing strategy. And so the stroke is usually the best technical rower because everybody, if they row well, then pretty much everybody can follow them. They want to be the ones that have a good rhythm so they can set the pace and have the right rhythm in the stroke because it's there's the subtleties you get into it is it's odd that that you would think it's just going back and forth on the slide but there is
it is not.
yeah, there is a subtlety to it, which I think the beauty of the sport. It's such a combination of brawn because when you're on the power, it's just how hard you can pull, and so you have big guys. It's great to have great strength in the boat, but there's a subtlety to the stroke that you have to be doing at the same time as you can't
Exactly.
get your next breath
At the same time, yeah.
and together, and then the
Yeah.
timing amongst each other and that's what makes an 8 in particular, I think the most exciting athletic activity I've done is when, and once or twice in a race, but usually just in a practice, when it just clicks, and it's called when we get swing, and all of a sudden when everybody is just right together, and you almost can't pull hard. You don't get tired.
Yeah.
You just that's when it's just a beautiful thing, and you have 8. In my case, it'd be 8 men, just full out power. You're just pushing yourself, but it's almost effortless, and it's a beautiful thing.
I compare it. It's not the same, but when I've been in the 4-boat and because it doesn't last very long either. You just get into that rhythm.
It can fall out.
You're like, oh, and then it's done. But I compare it to when you golf and when the club comes into contact with the ball and it just makes that perfect hit. So rare.
Yeah, I'm not a great golfer, but
it's the sound of that
I've had
feeling.
golfers describe that. Although I have a friend who played golf and rowed, and his golfing
Rowing's a bit harder.
yeah, and his golfing friends would ask him about rowing, and he described it the same way. So remember, when you get that perfect swing, and and you don't even have to look where the ball went because you just know it was hit right, and it's going to go long and straight, and he says, well, then just do that 220 times in a row at 40 strokes a minute.
There you go.
So
it's
that's
the
rowing.
speed. For you, what was your weakness in the boat? For you, what was the hardest part then in your technique?
Oh no, I rowed perfectly.
I was just going to say you rowed perfectly, but
you ask
I didn't want to say that.
You ask any oarsman, and they'll tell you they row perfectly.
It's the other guys.
That's either the nicest thing about rowing in the big boats, particularly. Yes, you can always blame the other guy, and you can always blame the equipment because we have lots of equipment that can go wrong. The rig was off. No, which actually I don't like. I think good rowers don't do that. But no, for me. I slouch a little bit at the finish, and so I'm always trying to work on that to sit up a little more because when you slouch, it lets your weight kind of settle in, and and part of it is that Harvard rows with it's not an actual pause, but Harvard, at least back in my day, they may change now because Harry's not coaching there anymore; he passed away. But with a pause at the finish is sort of the way and it's just a slight.
Mm-hmm.
The thing, but they and that allows that unfortunately I think allowed that habit to get a little bit bad. And whereas Vesper rows with a fast hands finish, get their hands out and then you kind of which I now like better. In fact, actually back then, because one of the things that hurt me in my Harvard career, I think, was that I in the summers was rowing at Vesper and picked up the Vesper style, and then when I get back to Harvard, it didn't quite mesh. And which is fine. If I'm in the boat, I would just follow the guys ahead of me. But then I stroked that year, and the other guys
Couldn't follow.
didn't quite anyway, it worked out well for a while. It worked out for 2,000 meters. We won all our 2,000-meter races.
Wow.
But it's in hindsight, looking back at it, we could see while we were usually well out ahead on them. But the other boats in the good races, the other boats were starting to come back on us in the last 500. But we had enough real estate to win. And in the Yale race that year,
is this the famous
no,
race?
that was the year before when I was sitting in 4 seat.
I want to hear
sophomore
this.
Year.
I want to hear this.
So that was great fun. And Harry Parker, who after rowing with my dad, he was the single sculler in 1960, and my dad was in the double.
Oh, okay.
So they were on the Olympic team together. And after he then was rowing at Vesper for another year or two, and he was rowing at Vesper too. Harry finished at Penn in 58, I think, and then was rowing at Vesper and on the Olympic Pan Am game in 59 team and then 60 in Rome with my dad. And then he got the job, the freshman coaching job at Harvard in 62. And Harvey Love, the varsity coach, had a heart attack. And so he ended up coaching the varsity.
Wow.
And won the Yale race, which Harvard at that point hadn't won in a number of years. And so the alumni were like, even though Harvey recovered and came back as the varsity coach the next year, they for health reasons he had to retire.
I see.
And Harry took over as the varsity coach that next year. He had gone 17 years in a row winning that race, and so my sophomore year, and Yale was getting very good those years. Yale had, I think my sophomore year there was a change in schedules so that we couldn't go to Eastern Sprints. So we hadn't gone up against Yale yet. Usually you have a race with them at Eastern Sprints beforehand. And but Yale had won Eastern Sprints, and so they were a tough crew. And we went out and
in a 4-boat?
This is in the
8-boat.
And we went out, and the Harvard Yale race is unique now in the United States. It's the only long race. It's a 4-mile race. All the college races used to be 4-mile races, 4 and 3 miles back in the turn of the century. But over the years, they all shortened them to the 2,000-meter length, which is the international racing length, the Olympic length. But Harvard and Yale, they're traditionalists, so we were the only ones who kept it. So we were down over 2 lengths open water at the 2-mile mark, and we were all thinking we were going to be the crew to lose the streak. And our stroke, Matt Arrett, I think the way he tells it, because they have flags every half mile, and he kind of lost track and thought he was coming into the last half mile, and so he tells the coxswain to call the rating up, and we step it up, and all of a sudden the boat, it was a shift that made the boat feel better, and we started. And you could start. And at first, we didn't quite believe the coxswain, because you can't, when you're that far behind, you can't see the other boat anymore as a rower, because you're facing backwards. And but the coxswain's telling us that we're gaining on them. And at first, you don't believe them because coxswains lie.
That's what they have to do. Yeah,
they're trying to motivate you.
Yeah.
And they lie sometimes. So and so you're not quite sure, but but we could tell the boat was feeling better and had gotten a little energy to it.
Yeah.
A little. And we're now 10, well, not quite 10 minutes, because it was also a course record. We finished it in, I think, 18 minutes or so. But so we're 9 minutes into this race, and we start coming back, and ended up catching them with a half mile to go, and then they collapsed, and we beat them by 4 lengths or something, because they gave up.
Yeah.
What happens when you break a crew? Then their rhythm's all off, and they're discouraged, and that's where the weight. As soon as we caught them, the weight of that, having now it became the 18th victory in a row. It destroyed them. But
that was a big day.
Yeah, that was fun. Unfortunately, the next year it was the reverse.
Just take the win. Take
exactly,
the win.
Yeah.
Did your dad and your grandfather? You didn't know your grandfather?
No, he passed away the year I was born.
Were there stories about them running around the family all the time?
Oh, yeah. And around the city, everybody.
Because the boathouse is named after your father, right?
Yeah. They after my dad died, they renamed it.
And the Kelly Avenue.
There's a Kelly Drive named after my dad.
And there's a statue
the
Of your
statue
grandfather?
at the finish line. There's a swimming pool, schools named after my grandfather. My grandfather, and he was head of the Democratic Party in Philadelphia for, I don't know, probably 20 years. He ran for mayor unsuccessfully, but it was at a time that the Republicans had still dominated this Philadelphia from the Civil War until 1950. And as chairman of the Democratic Party, he oversaw the first Democrat to be elected mayor, which was a guy named Clark Dilworth. But
One of the things I found interesting about your grandfather was that in 1920, he was not allowed to participate in the Henley
Yeah.
Regatta because he was considered a laborer. He owned his own brick
well,
laying
he hadn't
company.
started the company yet, but he had been
was a manual
he
labor?
was a bricklayer for his older brother who had a construction company.
And so he wasn't allowed to participate, but then he went on to compete in the Olympics and win 2 gold medals that year.
Yep. So yeah, that's the story that made him famous.
The snub, as they call it.
Exactly, yeah, and very popular amongst the Irish Americans. He was the national champion. He came back. He was a gifted athlete, and he before the war he had the life of Ryan really at the time. He was working for his older brother who had a construction business, so and bricklayers get paid reasonably well, good manual trade. And so he's was making okay money. As a young man, he's not married. He has no expenses. I think he was still living at home. And but he would play either boxing, basketball, football. He played semi-pro football. And rowed, and was doing very well in rowing. You see all these trophies at the club with all his names on them, and from that era. And then he goes off to the war, where he was in the ambulance corps in France, and returns home in 1918. Having decided now to focus on the sport he loved the most, which was rowing. He described rowing as the champagne of sports.
Really?
Yeah.
I like that.
And he, so he focused on it, became the national champions singles in 1919 and 1920. And as the champion, he wanted to go to Henley, which is like Wimbledon is to tennis, Henley is to rowing.
Okay.
It's particularly then the Olympics was relatively new. And Henley was approaching 100 years old already, and so that's where you wanted to go. And the Diamond Sculls, which is the singles race, is the most prestigious rowing trophy in the world, even to this day, but particularly then. So he wanted to compete, and so he sends in his application, and he gets a letter back like a week before he gets on the ship to sail to England, saying his entry was rejected, and that a letter of explanation would follow. Which never arrived. So we never got the official reason.
Really?
Henley did have rules against gentlemen competing against working men competing against gentlemen. That's where that story of that's why he was denied. But I think he thought it had a lot to do with him being Irish Catholic, and it was the Irish Revolution was occurring at that time. So I think they might not have been eager to have an Irishman come over. But anyways, he was a great self-promoter, and he promoted that image of the snub. And he then went on, instead of going to Henley, he went to the Olympics, where luck would have it, the Henley champion was on the opposite side of the ladder, and they each won all their races and ended up in the finals together for the gold medal.
Talk about motivation.
And he beat Jack Beresford for the gold medal. And then he turned around, as you noted, the second gold medal. He turned around and 40 minutes later raced, and this is very unusual, and it's never been done.
40 minutes later?
He raced the double with his cousin, Paul Costello. And that's never, no one in the history of the Olympics has won 2 gold medals in rowing in the same Olympics, much less the same day.
and also, I mean, he would have had to travel there. It's not like he just got on an EasyJet flight and flew over to Antwerp. I mean, there was a lot of travel involved and getting the boats. Like it was a much bigger ordeal just getting your foot there, getting yourself there.
Yeah.
So last year in December, I think you and Prince Albert were in Argenteuil, I think you call it.
Yeah, so a suburb of Paris.
Right, for a commemoration for your grandfather, who 100 years earlier had won a gold in Paris.
Right. So he went. So that he and his cousin Paul came back in 24. And rode in Paris at the Paris Olympics and won another gold medal. And they were an unbeatable double and an unusual physical double because Uncle Paul, there's sort of 2 kinds of Irishmen. There's the tall Liam Neeson type, and then there's the short James Cagney type, just to put in actors.
Yeah.
And that's what they were. My grandfather being the tall, and Uncle Paul he had that kind of James Cagney face. Even that you approach a brick wall, you can go around it or you can go through it, and you can just go through it.
Yep.
His choice would be to go through it, and he may have actually been the better rower in the end because he came back in 28. My grandfather had stopped rowing at that point, and so Uncle Paul just found another Irish American from the neighborhood, same neighborhood in East Falls, Philadelphia, that a guy named Charlie McIlvaine, and he won another gold medal with Charlie in 28.
So was the commemoration just for your grandfather or for both of them?
It was primarily for my grandfather. Again, my grandfather was a great promoter, so everybody remembers my grandfather, and Uncle Paul doesn't get quite the notice that he should. But yeah, so they are very kind of them, and they have a great rowing club there and on the Seine, and they unveiled a mural in the town recognizing Pop's and Paul's victory in Paris.
And you don't speak French. Okay, and so you had never been there, and you really felt that there was a connection to Philadelphia. I'd read a quote like that.
Yeah, when you go to a rowing club, there's something that's we're all doing the same thing, and it's and you meet these people who, and you don't love everybody who rows, but there's a certain connection you have with people. So yeah, that neighborhood, I think, is a little. I got the impression that part of why they were doing this was to help the young people have something to aspire to and to and see that the rowing and just setting your mind to things good. Again, a good example for young people there, and I think it sounded like that neighborhood was a little gritty. It wasn't,
a suburb of Paris being gritty? No, that can't be true.
Yeah, so that and that's and Philly's a gritty town. We take a little pride in that too.
Oh, do you and Prince Albert then often? Because I've seen photos of you also at commemorations in Ireland where they've unveiled a sculpture with Princess Grace. Do the two of you often sort of end up at the same little party?
Yeah, well, Albert, we're blessed that he's seems to have a fondness for his Philadelphia family.
He really does.
And so he calls in, and he likes having. I think he likes having family with him and doing these things. And so if he often invites us, and if we're available, we do our best to join him because it's always fun to be with him, and I like to support what he does.
And you are actually the president of the U.S. chapter of the Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation. So that started in 2008 for you?
For the U.S. chapter started in 2008. The foundation here in Monaco started in 2006.
Yeah, it'll be a big party next year, I think.
Exactly.
What do you do in that role? Like, what kind of what's asked of you in that role?
Organizing it and keeping the primary function is to help with the fundraising and sort of that people who are American taxpayers can, if they would like to help Albert's efforts with the environment, that they can do so on a tax-exempt basis. So that requires us to have our own board and manage that, and we have to make our own decisions on how to spend the money, although we use the guidance of this, sort of the inspirational guidance from Albert and the Monaco staff. And so we co-fund projects with them. We don't manage projects ourselves, and nor does the Monaco Foundation. They help fund other people's projects. So we work with the Smithsonian, with WWF, with the Nature Conservancy, and organizations like that to fund research or restoration projects in the areas of the environment. So focused particularly on climate change, biodiversity, and drinking water, but with an overlay of ocean focus because of the traditions here through Albert I and the Oceanographique.
Oh, you have a good French accent there. Finally comes through.
So it's a great. I enjoy that work a lot, and it's funny I think that I got into it because of Albert, which I did, and he was very kind to invite me to join in his efforts. But then as I was looking back, and I was volunteering with a recycling center when I was 16 years old. So, and then a lot of the banking I did, the projects I enjoyed and tended to try to steer my career through were around environmental projects. So, it's actually been which maybe that's why Albert asked me to do it.
Well,
versus
you ran for a counselor in 2023, and really that was part of your platform, was it not?
Yes, an unsuccessful run, but yeah.
I really admire anyone who puts themselves out there for a campaign because it can't be easy.
It's not. And there's all the dynamics of having to raise money and trying to ingratiate yourself with the party without sort of selling your soul kind of thing. Which maybe that's probably what I didn't do particularly well. But it's great getting out and meeting people, even though sometimes that can be uncomfortable with if you don't just tell them what they want to hear. So in addition to the environment, I was critical of our police department at that time and their performance after George Floyd incidents. I think they wanted to show people what it looked like if they didn't police. Yeah. And so there was and we had a 13% absentee rate at the police department. So it was people just checking out. They were playing it slow.
Well, you stayed to your platform. I mean,
yes.
that was those are your values.
And the neighbors, and so if I would mention any of that in the neighborhoods that were police neighborhoods, it got a little testy sometimes. But.
And how did you deal with defeat? Is that something that from all your years of competition, it applies to real life as well?
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with losing. What's wrong is not getting in the race.
I love that.
It's actually my grandfather had there's the more famous one of that Teddy Roosevelt always used to read about. The man in the ring, and admire just getting in the ring is worth. That's you don't want to be the guy who always said, "Oh, I wish I should have."
Yeah.
So losing. In fact, you lose more than you win. Even the champions.
Yeah.
Well, actually, maybe not my grandfather. He won 114 races in a row.
Wow.
But most people, lose.
Big oars to fill, I think, those ones.
Most people lose more than they win, but even champions.
Yeah. Since you started the work with the Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation, obviously you are recycling and, the environmental cause was part of you from a young age. What do you see, though, in the years that you've been with the foundation that gives us reason to hope in terms of the future of climate and biodiversity?
Actually, the thing particularly as things have been discouraging on this front in the United States ever since Trump was first elected, although we had Biden set things back on a good course, but then, of course, they're now the EPA and everything has been decimated. But no, one thing I always point to people when I have the opportunity to speak at these events is we can solve these problems when we do get the political will to do it. And we have examples of it. The Clean Air Act of the amendments to the Clean Air Act in 1991, passed by a Republican administration, eliminated sulfur dioxide emissions, which I don't know if that was an issue here in Europe, but in the United States, acid rain was a huge problem. Our Northeast forests were dying. Actually, where Albert and I went to summer camp, if you went and hiked those mountains, we were hiking them in the 70s, but I went back in the 90s and climbed a couple times with my kids, Shakora and Mount Washington, and the forests were visible damage to the forest from acid rain.
Jeez.
And I don't think anybody under the age of 35 knows what acid rain is now.
Yeah.
It was eliminated. And at half the cost that the naysayers said, they said it was going to destroy the American economy because it was going to make electricity more expensive. It didn't destroy the Clean Water Act passed by Richard Nixon in 1972. As a rower, I'm a huge beneficiary of that. Our rivers were disgusting when I first started rowing.
Really?
The Schuylkill River in Philadelphia was regularly had chemical pollution from the chemical plants upstream, sewage, disgusting river, and still had the legacy of the coal dust and the coal industry wasn't that strong anymore, but it was a coal transportation river because of the coal mining up in upstate Pennsylvania. And then actually my dad would talk about how the river used to be black with coal dust when he was a kid rowing. So it's hugely improved. The rivers are clean. The fish, we have just the other day, 2 bald eagles flying over, and this is in the middle of the city.
Wow.
They now fish, the bald eagles fish in the river. We have egrets. We have, we have a beaver now down. Unbelievable things that I never saw in the
Wow.
70s and 80s. The Clean Water Act was a huge success in our American rivers. So we can solve these problems, and nature recovers. When we start doing it right, nature recovers amazingly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm confident if we could pass a carbon tax, we would lick this climate change. Will take a while for just because of the dynamics of the climate. It will take a while to bring CO2 levels down for it to be absorbed into the oceans and so forth. But we would stop emitting the excess CO2. I think within 5 years, if we put a proper carbon tax in America and business around the world, but it seems like in particular American business responds to those motivations, and they will solve it.
You travel around the U.S. for the Prince Albert Foundation. I saw
Yeah.
you just recently, last week. There's a photo of you. I'm following you now. So there's a photo of you at the D.C. Environmental Film Festival, which I've never heard of. Do
Yeah.
these events make an impact?
They're helpful in making people aware. I think they had more impact earlier when people were unaware and didn't understand the climate. I think most people understand what's going on with the climate, and they either believe it or they don't believe it. I'm not sure we're convincing anybody now with these events, but I think it's still worthwhile. And that was one that the ambassador from Monaco to the United States was involved with, and that's what so she invited me to join them. And we used to support the Philadelphia Environmental Film Festival, and the film festivals in particular are wonderful because it's such a great communication medium. The one that I did not happen to see any of the ones that were featured in this one down in Washington, but the ones that we've done in Philadelphia. And one year in particular, there was just a great documentary done, and they went around and looked at several I guess you consider them like hotspots of the environmental change. Like one is a small island in the Chesapeake Bay that will, in 20 years, no one will live there, and it was interesting. And it's a tragedy for them. You build your family wealth is tied up in your house, and it's going to be gone, and no one will buy it now because it's the handwriting's on the wall. They're trying to increase the rocks around, and it's a tiny little island, so it's they're trying to build up the things around it, but you're just not going to be able to stop the water from coming.
Wow.
And the built rocks are protected from storms, but as sea level just rises, it's just going to be underwater, and that's just a microcosm of what's happening in the Pacific low-lying islands. But and it was interviewing the people and the mayor, and the mayor was a pro-Trump guy, and just and it showed the tragedy of it, but at the same time how where people's beliefs and hearts are. So that was one example, and another one was a West Virginia town that used to be a coal mining town, and the sort of the next generation of the family that owned the coal mines was coming back and reinvesting in wind farms and stuff, and so that was sort of a more positive, but it still showed the frictions with the coal mining community, and even though you would think they should be happy that there's new jobs they can train for. But that was a more inspirational one, and then there was another one about in Colorado. So there were these little vignettes of these different things, and I thought that was a very powerful movie. So I think they are good at, and because that's much better than an environmentalist getting up and talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
This 2 degrees change this year.
Oh yeah, people just
roll their eyes.
Yeah.
So that point of those kind, and it's not just film festivals, but so many of these events do help convey the emotion of it and the impact of it in a much better way than the scientists do. But then we need the scientists also to understand what's going on.
We do.
And you know what? They're very sad to report how correct they were. When their forecasts back in 2000, at the turn of the century, were poo-pooed by many people, and they've turned out, if anything, to be wrong on the downside by that they underestimated it.
But there's hope.
There is hope. We have our challenges now. Europe is doing a much better job than the United States right now. and it's not destroying your economy as much
What
as
economy?
um, the. So I think the United States will get back to it, and but we're losing time.
This is not related to the environment, but I know that you were involved with the restoration of Grace Kelly's home in Pennsylvania. Is that part of your role as the president of the U.S. chapter, or is that something different?
It's private. That's Albert's private effort. It does not use that, although we use the house as the headquarters for the U.S. chapter, but we don't.
It's not open to the public.
Not on a regular basis. We don't have set hours and staff of the house.
Do people drive by the house slowly and take photos? I mean, the address is known. So
yeah, and there's a historic plaque outside saying. And in Pennsylvania, they do. We have. It's actually kind of neat to drive around Pennsylvania and you see all these. The state puts up these plaques about different people who've done interesting things, and so they'll be in a letter saying so and so lived here.
But your dad was there, and Grace Kelly was there. Are there two plaques?
It's a big plaque because it talks about my grandfather,
Wow.
Kel, and my dad is known as Kel. It talks about Pop, Kel, and Grace, and all on this one. So it's one of the bigger of these state markers, historic markers. But no, the house is.
I know Prince Albert purchased the house in 2016 to restore
Correct.
it. Right?
Yes, yeah, the house, and there had been one family that lived there between my grandmother selling it in '74 and Albert buying it back in '16, and Mrs. Beaumont felt very much that she was preserving Grace's house, so she had not changed anything. But I was just amazed. I walked into the house, I hadn't been in there since I was 14 years old, and when Albert asked me to look in about buying it, and it had not changed. The same wallpaper, the same paint.
What was that like for you then to walk through?
It was like funky. No, I just would have thought, like almost like no one had lived there that whole time. But no, they had raised their family, and Mrs. Beaumont was there. At the end of her life, unfortunately, she had become a bit of a recluse, and while not changing anything, she also hadn't fixed anything. So we ended up having to essentially open every wall up to fix pipes and electrical in the walls. And then put everything back to. So when we finished, it was like, well, we didn't really do anything, but everything works now.
Wow.
It was a big effort, and she had 40 cats, which did not do a great duty
service
on the house.
anything.
No. That was.
What is
difficult.
the fascination still with Grace Kelly? Do you think in America, and then looking towards Monaco? How do people see Monaco, Americans specifically?
Well, let's see. The first on Grace. It is amazing. And particularly since she passed away so long ago. So there's, although maybe that helps people remember, creates more nostalgia or something. I'm not sure, but she was, I guess, and all the words are cliches now. Iconic. The ultimate image of Grace itself.
But you met her.
Oh, yeah.
People like that in this world. Do you know that? Do they emit something different? Do they have something?
I think my grandfather had it, and what's interesting, the Grace of the next generation, Grace is the one who had it the most, which is kind of interesting because she, as a child, she was the non-athlete because it was a competitive, like you described, asked earlier about everybody's. And my grandmother was a swimmer too, and started. Well, she wasn't an Olympian, but she started intercollegiate women's athletics at the University of Pennsylvania.
Wow!
So everybody was expected to compete in sports, but Grace didn't. She had no interest in that. So she was, the black swan. She was the outlier. She didn't fit in, and maybe that's why she went off to New York. So as soon as she could, and pursued her acting and probably Uncle George, who was a playwright in New York, was I think more of an influence on her career than Pop was. But she obviously learned from watching Pop too, and she had that. Pop, everything I heard about him was he walked in a room and everybody noticed him, and he had that charisma, that charm. He looked good, dressed well, spoke well, and treated people well. So it was like a magnet. And I think Grace learned all those lessons, and she knew how to carry herself. And that's where I think she was so different in Hollywood, because she came with that confidence and elegance that was not the trend before her with the leading ladies in Hollywood, and that created a whole new image and why people, I think.
What's amazing about the story of Princess Grace and then the connection to Monaco is that she really did have that elegance and that, it wasn't just an on-screen persona. It was very
Exactly.
clear
Yeah.
that then she came and married Prince Rainier, and she created the real link between the United States and Monaco and Ireland. What is the fascination then for Americans? Is there a fascination towards Monaco?
Oh yeah. No.
And what do they think Monaco is in your mind?
Well, a lot of people, I think, see it just as, it's this glitzy place for rich people. And one thing I like enjoyed dissuading him of that it's, yes, it does have that, of course, but, and I've been fortunate to spend enough time here that getting to know people here and just what a wonderful place it is. So I try to help people understand that, but that's just one person. But yeah, no, it is for the general public. But in Philadelphia, there's an extra touch to it because they see it as where Gracie went, and they do feel a connection. The almost every hotel in Philadelphia has pictures of Grace and buildings. A lot of the residential building, like just one around the corner was just built, and they have this beautiful one of those nail and wire pieces of art. It's huge of Grace. Another hotel, their private bar is every picture in there is of Monaco and Grace. And so there's still there's people still feel a connection, very much, even though it's now, the people who knew Grace and went to school with Grace are for the most part have passed away now. But the next generation still still feels a connection and admired her and frankly through her they admire Monaco.
Oh yeah, and you're going to admire Monaco from the sea this weekend
Yes.
because it is the Challenge Prince Albert II Rowing Cup. Now we're going to end off with this, but I just want to say to people, it's the 20th anniversary, the 20th edition of this competition. What makes this competition unique? I mean, it's a regatta that's open to everyone, but what makes this one unique?
Well, for us, it's unique because it's coastal rowing versus flatwater rowing. So it's a little different. The mechanics in the boat are the same, so our oarsmen can do that. And I brought with me a team from our club, from the Vesper Boat Club.
You're actually your team's rowing this weekend.
Yeah, we have a team competing.
What's the name of the team?
The Vesper Boat Club.
Okay,
team,
very good.
Which is where Pop rode and Kel rode, and when
That's really
Albert's
quite something.
When Albert has joined us, and we used to do a family rowing boat at a race in Philadelphia, and Albert's joined us in there. He knows how to row as well.
But wait a second. There's a photo of you and Albert in 2016, and you're in an 8-boat outside of the port of Monaco.
Yeah.
Was that for this challenge?
It was actually. I think that was much earlier than that. I think it was might have been the first edition of the race.
Okay.
20 years ago, and
You can't believe anything you read online.
I'm pretty sure that was it was one, if not the first edition of the race, one of the first ones. And they used to have this great wooden 8, coastal 8, and it's neat because you don't sit in line, you sit staggered.
Oh yeah, we still have that.
Yeah, and you have some of those in they're sweep boats, not sculling boats. And so we had 4 Kellys in the boat and 4 people from Société Nautique, and unfortunately we lost the race to San Remo. Well, it wasn't supposed to be a race; it was supposed to be a parade.
Yeah, but when you're in
you
the
have
boat,
2 boats
doesn't matter.
next to each other, it becomes a race. And we suffered a little equipment. Okay, blaming the equipment.
Exactly.
We did actually the backstay on my oar unfortunately was not intact, and I couldn't keep.
Oh, it was
pitch.
your fault.
It was my fault.
The loss comes down to you,
Yes,
John
it
Kelly.
does. Yeah.
This particular competition is a different format. Is that correct? You have a 4-boat, and then everyone in the boat has to do a different race?
Yeah, they changed the format to this a couple of years ago, and I really like this format. And actually, I might even bring in, and they allow old guys to do this, even though there's not a separate category. So next time we come, I may put together an old man's group to do it, so we have 4 young rowers, 5 including the coxswain, who will be competing. And the format is it's the same 4 people, so you can't bring subs and stuff like that. And so one man and one woman will row the singles race. So it'll be a men's singles race and a women's singles race. And then the other 2 from the boat, from the quad, will then row a mixed double. And then in the afternoon, they combine all up into a coxed quad. And then they rejoin again on Sunday morning for a sprint race. So the Saturday races are, I think, 4K, somewhere between 4 and 5K out on the ocean. And then the sprints are in the harbor, 500 meters in the harbor. And then they combine the results of all those to find out the ultimate winner. They add up points for each of the wins. So if you win the singles and the women's singles, maybe you get the team gets third, and the double gets sixth, but the quad did really well and wins again. So it depends on your points. You may come out as the winner overall.
Well, there's a lot of competition this year. It's the biggest rowers in the world. Can people watch rowing and enjoy it from up on the Digue?
The new technology, rowing used to be a terrible spectator sport because it's such far distances you can't really see what's going on. Which is why in the old days there were courses where you do it where there's a train track along the river, and you had bleachers on the train tracks, which would help.
Always safe.
Yeah, which really looked. In the old days, it was just like a bleacher nailed down to this flatbed train. It's like there's no fence, there's no.
The good old days.
Right? You just did it, and no one cared. So without that sort of things, rowing is a difficult to watch sport. But now with drones and technology, so it's great if you're up on the quay on the breakwater there, you can see the start and the finish of the race, and then there's screens that you can watch the race on.
Oh, fantastic!
And so it actually makes a much better spectator event now. And part of the fun of rowing is just the equipment and the stuff. So even if you can't see the race terribly well, just seeing the boat shove off. And,
especially the starts.
And the starts are great. And you can see the start because they're right. The start and the finish are right outside the harbor. And so this site is a great site. Or from the bar in the Fairmount Hotel, you can get a great view. If it's raining, you might find me there.
Now, does Prince Albert row?
He does row. He rows a little bit. I don't think he gets out there regularly. He rows on in his gym. He has an ergometer, so he will do it there. And but he does know how to do it. And again, he raced with us in Philadelphia a couple of times. We for about 8 years back in the 90s, we had a family. Everybody in the boat had to be a family member.
I love that
because we have all the cousins. We all rowed, and so either in high school or college. And so the first time we did it was like some of them hadn't rowed since college. That was a little rough. We never did all that well, but it was fun. It was a great way to get the family together. And Albert did join us at least once. And I know he did once. I'm trying. It might have been twice, but it's a little while ago now.
So just to close off the podcast, I saw the photo of you with Prince Albert and Princess Charlene in 2014 because the little bridge that goes down to the dock at the rowing club was inaugurated as the Ponton Kelly. And you were here for that. What was that like to have your family name as a part of the Société Nautique de Monaco?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and it was wonderful that the club would recognize Pop. I think I'm not sure. I think it was Pop. They were focused on Albert's grandfather as well. Well, again, it creates this connection, and that from that event, we've built on the connection with the club. Their champion at the time, Kenton Antonelli. When he was at the Canadian, he rode at the Canadian Henley and when the Worlds were in Sarasota, Florida, and he came and spent I think about 6 weeks rowing with our team in Philadelphia.
Oh wow!
Well, because he didn't want to fly all the way back and forth, and so it was a great time to build on that relationship. We've had a couple other visitors from the club over the years, and I hope we can do more. I'd love to get the Société to send a crew for the Head of the Schuylkill, which is our big fall race, or Independence Day race would be good.
But Quentin is going to be one of your competitors this weekend.
Yes, the Société Nautique is very strong in coastal rowing. I've told our rowers one of the challenges for them, they'll be steering the course, particularly in the single and the double, where the oarsmen have to steer themselves without a coxswain. And so my advice to them has been, at the starting line, get behind the red and white crew and follow them. And then on the last leg, because then you just follow them, let them steer because they know the course better. And then if you have enough gas left in the tank in the last stretch, try to pass them. But I don't think they're going to be able to catch them. But,
well, that's great advice, John. Thank you so much for coming on to Monaco Info, the podcast, and have a great Challenge Prince Albert 2 weekend.
Thank you.